There's a paradox at the heart of Generation Z. They are the most mental health-aware generation in history. They have more tools, more language, and more willingness to talk about their psychological well-being than any who came before them. And yet, by nearly every metric, they are suffering the most. Most of Gen Z is burnt out, but a huge portion of them haven't even started their first full-time job. What gives? For years, the prevailing narrative has been a simple dismissive one. They're fragile, they're lazy, they're entitled. But what if that narrative is not only wrong, but dangerously misleading? What if their exhaustion isn't a character flaw, but a predictable symptom of the world they were raised in? The truth is, Gen Z's burnout isn't happening in the workplace. It's a pre-existing condition they're carrying into the workplace. It's the result of a compounding crisis, a triple threat of systemic pressures that has been draining their energy for years. In this episode, we're flipping the perspective. We'll deconstruct the three systemic forces creating this pre-workforce burnout, reveal the staggering data that proves this isn't just a feeling, and introduce the one skill that will define their future success: resilience fluency. Stick with us as we decode this crisis. And if this sounds familiar, make sure you're subscribed to GENSHIFT for more tools to navigate the modern world. 1. The triple threat, the systemic roots of pre-work burnout. To understand the state of Gen Z, imagine a marathon runner. But instead of starting fresh at the line, they've been forced to run a grueling preliminary race, all while carrying a heavy backpack. By the time the main event begins, they're already exhausted. This is the reality for an entire generation. Their backpack is filled with three distinct, crushing weights: financial dread, academic strain, and digital overload. The first and heaviest weight is the constant, low-level hum of financial anxiety. For many in Gen Z, their entry into adulthood was marked not by opportunity, but by debt. The burden of student loans is so significant that it has caused their generation's average credit score to drop more than any other group. This isn't just a number on a screen, it's a barrier to life's basic building blocks. This financial marathon is compounded by a cost of living crisis that feels inescapable. A 2025 study found that 51% of Gen Z see the high cost of living as a direct barrier to financial success, with essentials like groceries and rent consistently costing more than they anticipated. The result is a generation living on a razor's edge. A staggering 55% don't have enough emergency savings to cover just 3 months of expenses. This chronic financial precarity does more than create stress. It imposes a relentless cognitive tax. A portion of their mental energy every single day is automatically allocated to worrying about survival. This constant drain makes them far more susceptible to anxiety and depression, while simultaneously making potential remedies like therapy feel like an unaffordable luxury. The second weight in the backpack is the academic and competitive strain of the modern education system. School is no longer just a place to learn. It is transformed into a high-stakes, decade-long performance. The pressure isn't simply to get good grades, a stressor felt by 61% of teens, but to meticulously curate a flawless profile of extracurriculars, internships, and leadership roles. This relentless need to stand out is fueled by the perception of a hyper-competitive global job market where anything less than exceptional feels like a guarantee of failure. This creates a performance treadmill that never stops. It conditions young people to see every moment as an opportunity for optimization, leaving no room for genuine rest, curiosity, or the messy process of self-discovery. This intense pressure doesn't vanish at graduation. It follows them directly into the workforce, where job performance anxiety is already rampant among the youngest employees. They've been trained for burnout long before they receive their first paycheck. The final weight, and perhaps the most insidious, is digital overload. Gen Z are digital natives, but this fluency has come at a steep psychological cost. They spend an average of 9 hours a day on screens, a figure that dwarfs all previous generations. A huge portion of this is on social media, where over half of them spend more than 3 hours every day. But this isn't just about the quantity of time, it's about the corrosive quality of that time. This constant exposure is directly linked to a phenomenon known as social media fatigue, a state of exhaustion born from information overload and the relentless pressure of online life. Every scroll is an invitation to compare their messy reality with the curated highlight reels of others, fueling a deep sense of inadequacy. They are also the first generation tasked with managing a public-facing online self-reputation, an unpaid 24/7 second job of performing and curating their identity for an invisible audience. The digital world isn't just another stressor, it's a crisis multiplier. It takes the financial anxiety and academic pressure and puts them on a global, algorithmically driven stage, amplifying their weight and making them impossible to running on empty data on Gen Z's mental battery. The feeling of being drained, anxious, and overwhelmed is not just an anecdote. It is a measurable public health crisis, confirmed by a decade of startling data. When we visualize Gen Z's collective mental energy, the battery isn't just low, it's critically depleted, hitting the red zone long before the first day of work ever appears on the timeline. The most powerful evidence of this crisis comes from a direct generational comparison. The Colorado Health Institute tracked the mental health of young adults aged 18 to 26 over a decade. The findings are staggering. In 2023, a full 36.9% of Gen Z in that age bracket reported poor mental health. Just 10 years earlier, in 2013, only 11.1% of millennials at the same age reported the same. This represents a more than threefold increase in psychological distress in a single decade. The foundational systems of our society, from higher education to corporate career paths, were built on the assumption that young adults arrive with a full reserve of energy and ambition. This data proves that the assumption is now fundamentally broken. This trend is echoed across multiple studies. Gallup research reveals that only 47% of Gen Z are considered thriving, the lowest of any generation. Only 20% rate their own mental health as excellent, a stark contrast to the 29% of millennials or 39% of baby boomers who say the same. According to the American Psychological Association, Gen Z is 27% more likely than any other generation to describe their mental health as just fair or poor. The physical toll is just as severe, with an astonishing 91% of young Gen Z adults reporting they have experienced at least one physical or emotional symptom due to stress in the past month, from sadness and anxiety to sleepless nights. This isn't a generation that's simply more willing to complain. It's a generation experiencing a quantifiable collapse in well-being. On top of these existing pressures, a new and uniquely modern stressor has emerged: the specter of artificial intelligence. This has given rise to a phenomenon called anticipatory anxiety, or A-anxiety, a pervasive fear that their chosen career path may become obsolete before it even begins. This isn't a vague futuristic worry, it's having a concrete impact right now. A 2024 Cengage survey found that 51% of recent graduates have second-guessed their career choices specifically because of advancements in AI. Nearly half, 43%, have already changed or adjusted their career plans in response to AI's growing influence. This anxiety is validated by a harsh job market, where companies are using AI to automate the very entry-level tasks that once served as the first rung on the career ladder. As a result, recent graduates accounted for just 7% of new hires in 2024, a sharp drop from 11% in 2022. This creates the psychological burden of pre-obsolescence, the demoralizing feeling of being outdated before you've even started. It retroactively invalidates the immense sacrifice of their education, transforming career anxiety from a challenge to be overcome into a potential existential dead end. 3. The new survival skill: mastering resilience fluency. Given this systemic overload, the old advice to simply work harder or be more resilient is not only unhelpful, it's insulting. You cannot tough out a crisis of this magnitude. The solution isn't to find ways to endure more pain, it's to develop a new strategic skill set for protecting the finite energy you have left. This skill is resilience fluency. Traditional resilience is often framed as the ability to bounce back from adversity. Resilience fluency is different. It's the proactive ability to understand, manage, and defend your mental and emotional boundaries before they are breached. It reframes self-care from a fluffy indulgence into a strategic necessity for survival in the modern world. It involves 3 core competencies: radical awareness of your energy levels, unapologetic boundary setting, and intentional restoration. Developing this fluency starts with concrete, actionable steps. First, you must establish firm digital boundaries. The always-on culture is a primary driver of burnout. This means turning off all non-essential notifications, which are designed to hijack your attention. It means scheduling dedicated screen-free time each day to allow your brain to reset. And it means practicing digital minimalism, consciously curating your feeds to remove sources of comparison and anxiety. Second, you must practice active self-compassion to counter the internal pressure of the performance treadmill. This involves learning to challenge your inner critic and separating your self-worth from your productivity. It's about recognizing that rest is not a reward to be earned after you've burned out. It is a non-negotiable requirement for sustainable performance. Finally, resilience fluency requires intentional restoration. This means differentiating between low-quality, passive consumption like aimless scrolling and high-quality active leisure that genuinely recharges your battery. This could be a hobby, time in nature, or deep present connection with friends. By mastering this skill, you resolve the painful conflict between the need to rest and the guilt of not being productive. Protecting your energy is no longer a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of strategic intelligence. The future of work will be defined by this concept. Companies that fail to recognize this pre-workforce burnout will inherit an exhausted, disengaged, and fragile workforce. They will face a crisis of retention and productivity, but the individuals in Gen Z who master resilience fluency will become the most valuable assets in any organization. They will know how to protect their energy, work sustainably, and avoid burnout. They will be the ones who not only survive the future of work, but also have the energy to build it. Conclusion. The widespread burnout of Generation Z is not a story about a fragile generation. It is a story about a generation that has been systematically overloaded. Their exhaustion is a wake-up call, a clear signal that our educational, economic, and digital systems have pushed past the limits of human endurance. While the ultimate solution requires these systems to change, individual empowerment must be the first step. To a successful and sustainable career no longer begins with learning how to hustle harder. It begins with learning how to protect the vital energy you have left. That is the new foundation for success. In the comments below, share one boundary you're going to set this week to protect your energy. And to join a community that's building a more resilient future, make sure you subscribe to GENSHIFT.